can think of from way back in the day?
I can talk some more about it. Yeah. I can remember when my daddy went to the cotton field to, to chop cotton. And there's a big old oak tree sitting over on the cotton field. And the boss come out there riding a horse. And he slapped daddy across the head 2 or 3 times with one of them hand, hand hold guns and run him out from under the tree. Me and mama was sitting on the opposite of the tree, and he told us, if you want to stay on my farm, you better get up and get to go to work, or don't you get the hell off of it. I never will forget that. And Daddy worked all that day. We worked all that day, but we went in that night. Uh, he cut out the lights on every house that had lights on, and told the people they didn't want to work. They'd sleep in the dark. They won't have no fire. Oh, it was hell back there then. White folks didn't care nothing about no black folks back there in my young days. They was all just like mules, horses, and dogs to the white back in them days. Uh, I know they carried my daddy out in the woods and tied rope around his neck and pulled him up by the tree limb, and Daddy stayed there until he passed out. They stood there until Daddy passed out. When Daddy passed it out, uh, they let him down. Let him down, and I guess it's about 10 or 15 minutes before my daddy come back to himself. And when he did that, he told Daddy to get the hell off of his farm and don't come back there. Sorry working son of a bitch. So Daddy left there walking that evening about sundown. We didn't. That was on a Monday. We didn't see my daddy, until that next Monday. And that next Monday, uh, the next Monday, Daddy moved with a white man they called Mr. John Campbell. And Mr. John Campbell was good to us. He helped Daddy move, helped Daddy get his stuff together, bought us a bunch of groceries. That's when that bad luck started leaving us. Away from Mr. John Campbell about 7 years. And when he died, his wife sold a farm. And Daddy moved back to Lone Oak then. And he started working for a man they called Mr. John Campbell. And Mr. John Campbell worked Daddy about 6 or 7 months. He bought him a new car. And he sold Daddy his old A model car. He sold it to Daddy. And that's when Daddy packed his little clothes what he had and left him to Mama. He went back home to his daddy. His daddy lived in Cairo, Illinois. That was his home, my daddy's home. My mama's home was in Arkansas. And he was jumping on Mama, beating Mama up. A white fellow come along there one day. Mama was crying and carrying out. He asked her what's wrong, so she told him. He said, well, get what you want to carry with you, and damn the rest, he said, and I'll send you home. And he picked my mama up in the truck and carried us to the bus.
When black people ask for reparation, I mean, you gotta give them because this group of people have gone through difficult times in history. Get to understand that I've just watched the video of that old man trying to share the vivid experiences of how everything was happening by then. It is really painful. It is really sad. And I think we can use this moment to just learn and at least challenge all those group of people that thinks that racism ended a long time ago. Because in as much as you might say that it ended a long time ago, we still have its enormous effects. We have people that are having the PTSD. We are still having people that are still feeling the weight of racism and what happened during all those Jim Crow times. So many times you hear white people argue that, racism ended a long time ago. But let's just be honest. Racism never ended a long time ago. Well, in fact, racism is still going on. Why am I saying racism is still going on? The mentality of white people makes me believe that racism is still very fresh and never left, as people thought that emancipation of slavery happened. I don't really think emancipation happened fully. The truth is here. We are having still our people. We are having still black people that are still recalling the enormous effects. So black people deserve reparations. So many times when people argue that black people don't deserve reparations, I think it's so unfair. I'll give 2 reasons why it is valid for black people to have their own, to just be given the reparations because they deserve it. First, I'm not talking about the amount of years in time that black people have wasted trying to make America great. But it never benefited them until today, is still not benefiting any black person. The second thing, people that are saying that racism ended a long time ago, they are beneficiaries of racism. These white folks are beneficiaries of racism. Some of them are still living in houses that their great-great-grandparents built, that black people paid by building, by blood and sweat, the land that was taken from black people. Some of these folks are still living in these places. And look at the post-traumatic slave syndrome that black people are always going through. That all simply tells you that this is something that is still going on. This is something that still lives within black people. Brothers and sisters, I don't want to say much. I just want us to watch this video, and then I'm going to be back. I'll be giving my thoughts and commentaries in regards to this. So if you're watching me for the first time, I'm your host and presenter, Stories. Stay tuned and let's watch the video. I'll be back.
The first black people born with full legal rights in this country are not even 60 years old. That's not ancient history. That's your mama, your daddy, your auntie, your coworker. So I don't want to hear nobody fix their lips and say slavery was a long time ago. No, freedom was a minute ago. Y'all love pretending like the race started fair, like we all started at the same starting line. No, one group ran for centuries, the other got released from chains and told, good luck. And when we didn't magically become equal overnight, you called it laziness instead of math. Less than 60 years mean that the people who wrote the discriminatory laws are still alive. The people who enforced them are still alive. The people who benefited from it are still collecting interest. So miss me with the I didn't own a slave. You didn't have to. You inherited the benefits anyway. History didn't end. It just changed tactics.
Slavery was so long ago. Why don't you get over it?
This is my great-great-grandfather, Bishop Benjamin Jones, born during slavery. This is his son, Reverend Benny Jones, my great-grandfather. And this is his son, Ernest Jones, my granddaddy, and me. That didn't take long. I'm the kid in this pic. My mother is holding me, and I'm next to my great-grandmother, Flossie Wilder, that escaped off of a plantation with her husband away from sharecropping, and they actually fled to Augusta, Georgia in the middle of the night. They could have been killed or arrested. Flossie died when I was in college, For many African Americans, especially those of us growing up in the Deep South, we're only about 2 or 3 generations away from a physical plantation. So when people say slavery was so long ago, ask them for who.
You know, people will say black people need to just get over it. They'll say we need to just get over it. Slavery was so long ago. Black people need to just get over it. But it's not just about slavery. It's about today. It's about the fact that I grew up with my parents telling me about Eleanor Bumpers, who was in the kitchen cooking dinner for her family before she was unjustly unalived by police. It's about the fact that Ayanna Jones is a 7-year-old girl who was taking a nap on the couch and never got the chance to wake up again because the police raided the wrong house. It's about a Tatiana Jefferson who was unjustly unalived in front of her nephew because the police responded to a non-emergency call, yet somehow, someway, they sent bullets through her window. It's about Sandra Bland never making it home after she was unjustly arrested during a traffic stop because she just wanted to finish her cigarette. It's about Breonna Taylor laying in bed with her partner before the police ran in her home without identifying themselves and sent 6 shots through her body, unjustly unaliving her, and then trying to cover it up and still getting away. And today we have Sonia Massey in her kitchen, following instructions. They told her to turn off the pot of boiling water. She turned off the water. She goes to dump it out. They accuse her of trying to come at them. She puts her hands up with the oven mitts on. She ducks down. Weapons are already drawn by this point, and she's unjustly unalive. And there's questions about whether or not she deserves it. So when they say black people need to just get over it, slavery was so long ago. It's not just about slavery. It's not about so long ago. It's about systemic oppression as a result of racism that still exists today. It's about the fact that every time we think we've gotten over one hurdle, a new one appears. It's about the fact that, yes, there was slavery. Yes, there was Jim Crow. Yes, there was redlining. But we have Eleanor Bumpers. We have Ayanna Jones. We have a Tatiana Jefferson. We have Sandra Bland. We have Breonna Taylor. We have Sonia Massey. And so many others. How can we get over it when it's always right in front of us?
The pains, the agony, the struggles, the fights, the weep, the tears of black people that were enslaved still remain up till date. I don't know why some people would just sit down and assume that slavery was long time ago. Did you watch the first clip I actually roll out for you guys? And if we do not keep talking, it is getting to that point where these people are even ready to keep enforcing what we don't want to take. It is getting to that point where these people now can boldly tell you that they wish it is the era of slavery. You can imagine somebody carrying his mic, setting his camera and saying, oh, black Americans, you should be grateful for slavery because if not for slavery, you would have been in Africa. That mindset, that mentality of every single black person in America is through ship is where I don't know where it's coming from. If slavery was a long time ago, we still have someone here sharing experience and stories. But welcome back to the channel. My name is Sonia. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. Credits belong to the original creators of every single clips and stitches we have in our today's episode. I want to say a very big thank you to every single one of you liking, commenting, sharing, dropping super thanks, and also joining my membership. I do not take you guys for granted. You guys are absolutely the best. With that being said, let's continue watching these clips. I'll be back with commentaries because I have a lot to say at the end of this video. Let's watch, guys.
My parents are the first people in my family born with equal rights in this country. I was having a discussion over the weekend with someone who is from the South, who's white, and who had not really been around black people. And he said that at a party we were at. He was like, this is the most black people I've been around. And he was a Republican, and I could tell. And he started talking about his views. And he said, well, you know, black people, I just feel like you guys all seem like you work hard and you pulled yourself up. Black people complain too much about being black and about racism and about how this country's keeping them down. It's not like my family had a silver spoon. And I said to him, do you understand the systematic racism that was put into place in this country and how that impacted everyone? And he was like, well, yeah, all you guys do is complain about things that happened so long ago. It's not like you were slaves. That was so long ago in the past. And I said, well, my grandmother picked cotton, and my parents were, my mom was born with equal rights, and my dad was born when the year segregation ended. And he was like, that's not true. And I said, people who are 60 years old, they're the oldest people who were the first ones born with equal rights in this country. This is exactly why they want to take away critical race theory. This is exactly why they want to take away DEI. This is exactly why they don't want to teach real history, because once we take away the air of like this happened a millennia ago and we stop talking about it, people will just literally forget it. Can act like it never happened. And that's how revisionist history occurs in this country.
Racists will tell you slavery was so long ago, get over it. Okay, what about this? Can I buy a vowel? I can't hear you. White people would go to church, get the good word, and then they'd gather the family, gather Meemaw, go to the house, get the potato salad, hop in the Volkswagen, go to the nearest park, and watch a black man get strung up from a tree. And we have pictures. We have pictures of these. You know why? Because white supremacy can't exist without spectacle, right? Look at the way MAGA operates. Everything's a spectacle, right? We have pictures of this because lynchings were a spectacle. And these lynchings, these pictures, a lot of them, you can find them online. Go do your Googles. These are from the 20th century. How old is your grandma, right? There are pictures of these from the 1930s and the 1940s and the 1950s. My wife's grandfather just turned 94. He was alive when this was happening. These lynchings, they were a spectacle. They weren't just hang him up from the tree and leave after he stopped breathing. No, they would hang him up from the tree, emasculate him, burn the body, take parts of the body home, make furniture with it, make food with it, make drinks with it, right? White supremacy cannot exist without spectacle, right? And every facet of white supremacy has spectacle juxtaposed to it. Pay attention.
Imagine this. You and your entire family are asleep in your home, peaceful, safe, and happy. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, strangers break in. They're armed. They beat your father, they chain your mother, and they drag your children out of bed crying. They don't speak your language. They don't even care about your rights because they're not here to negotiate. They load you onto a filthy ship, and for weeks you're shackled in your own waste. You're barely fed with people dying next to you. You hear screaming, you see children being thrown overboard, and this is not war. This is business. When you reach their land, they sell you like cattle. Your family's ripped apart forever. Your name is taken, your language is forbidden, and your God is erased. And your body, well, it belongs to them now. You will be worked until you die, and your children will be born into the same horror. Your grandchildren will never know freedom, and 400 years later, their descendants will look at your descendants and say, why can't y'all just get over it? The transatlantic slave trade wasn't just bad. It was a multi-century genocide masked in economics. It wasn't just physical slavery. It was a erasure of entire cultures, families, languages, and futures for profit. If that had happened to your family, would you just move on?
Have you ever wondered why there's such a visceral reaction from white people when we try to talk about America's true history? That, my friends, is a trauma response. White America has been generationally traumatized by slavery, by white supremacy. As human beings, it is traumatizing to be owned. It is also traumatizing to dehumanize everybody around you in order to own them. And rather than deal with that trauma, deal with the ways that owning people from womb to tomb, of procreating for the purposes of profit, thank you, one drop rule, could and did have on white Americans. We've spent generations ignoring white generational trauma from slavery, and we've just embedded it into society. We've just normalized the trauma. There is nothing normal about having a violent, visceral reaction at the idea of learning about history. Traumatizing to be having children, creating children against the women's will for the purposes of profit. Whether it is to sell them off into slavery, or it is to work them to the bone from the moment that they are born, or to carry on your legacy as your descendant. Brother picked up arms against brother to determine which humans were human and who deserved to be treated as such. That is traumatic. Instilling that lack of empathy in white America, but we never recognized that that loss of humanity was traumatic. We just said, That's the American dream. That's the capitalistic way. Let's add a few laws to make sure it sticks.
Something that baffles me about a lot of black people is that they hate slavery. They hate Americanized slavery so much. They hate what it did to our people, our ancestors, and the effects that it has today. But they completely ignore the indoctrination part. Like, they completely ignore the effects, the negative effects that Christianity had on slaves. I mean, as we know, slaves weren't really allowed to read. In places where they were allowed to read, their literature was heavily restricted and were only allowed to read things like the Slave Bible, which is basically just a highly edited version of the Bible that takes out, like, basically the good stuff and leaves in stuff that basically is pro-slavery, like stuff about owning slaves and telling slaves to obey your masters and stuff like that. Like, it's just mind-boggling to me how so many black Christians ignore that part of Christian history. And it's not like it's old news. I mean, this is pretty recent history-wise. Like, you believe in an all-powerful God, but he did nothing for 300 plus years while your ancestors were enslaved. And let's not forget the 3Ks, white hood people. Like, that's a Christian group. A lot of people like to say they weren't Christian, they were burning crosses. They were Christian. They were Christian. Like, you can talk with any clan tag member, they're a Christian. I don't think I've ever seen a clan tag member that wasn't a Christian. And no, I am not saying because of this that all Christians are bad people or all Christians are racist. I'm not saying that at all.
To all my black brothers and sisters, I must admit, I do get a little bit frustrated having to say these things over and over and over again. However, because I love you guys, I will continue to say it. Slavery was a lie in the way we were told it. And in fact, slavery has never really ended. Slavery has just gotten multiple updates to its software, and frankly, black slaves in America are just really expensive now. Just look at people like Jay-Z, LeBron, Nicki Minaj, and other black individuals that have made all of their wealth within institutions that are not owned by black people. But this idea that all of our ancestors were in chains and were in bondage and were coming over here on slave ships is just utter BS. And like I tell you guys in all my other videos, I'm not asking you to be a rocket scientist when thinking about this. Just use the resources available to you. Ask your grandparents and your great-grandparents, like, hey, what's this slavery thing about? And many of them will tell you, like, that is not how it went down. And let's be crystal clear about this. Most of the understanding that we have about slavery and what it was like has been given to us by Hollywood. Movies like Roots, movies like Django, and other movies where they emotionally provoke you into believing something that is not necessarily true. And you may say, well, are you denying what happened and the atrocities that happened during slavery? And it's like, no. However, I just understand that a lot of these instances were aberrations at best. An aberration is something that is aside from the norm. So were there instances where slaves may have gotten whipped or beaten? Absolutely. However, was that normal and was that every single slave in America? No. But because we've all seen these movies and we've all been told these stories, we just assume that that was how it was for everybody. And the way that you know the story is not true and the way that you know these movies are manipulation is, think about it. When have you ever seen a movie depicting early American times when the main character was a black man that was free from the beginning of the movie? I'm not saying at the end he becomes free, he gets his freedom. From the beginning of the movie. Never. And there's many reasons why, but one, they can't allow us to think like that because once black people start thinking like that, it get real spooky out here. And the fact of the matter is, like I've shown in recent videos on my page, there was 488,000 free black folk walking around America in the year 1860, but they never show you that in movies. By the way, 1860 was 5 years before slavery ended. So on this Black History Month, 2026, I would love to see a lot of my black brothers and sisters realize that slavery is no longer out in the fields picking crops, but it's up here.
All right, racists.
Look, Supreme Court, I'm going to break it down for you. Me, my wife, and my daughters, we all supposed to be free. We're not supposed to be slaves. And I'm going to explain why.
Welcome back to class. Today's lecture will cover a very important court case and person. Dred Scott versus the United States in 1857. And the plaintiff in this case was Mr. Dred Scott. Dred Scott was born in 1799 in Southampton, Virginia. Dred Scott's born name was Sam, but once his younger brother passed away at a young age, Sam took his name. In 1836, Dred Scott married Harriet Robinson. They got married at Fort Snelling, which was said to be a free territory, and supposedly that made their marriage legal. Something very unusual for enslaved individuals because, again, that was considered illegal for enslaved people. And the area in Virginia where Dred was born was home to the Nottoway tribe. And oddly enough, the Nottoway people, who speak an Iroquoian language, they were described as dark-skinned. The Nottoway people were specifically described by William Byrd as the mahogany skins or the copper-colored ones of Nottoway Town. William Byrd was the son of a colonizer and was born on American soil. He is credited as the founder of Richmond, Virginia. But of course you can't find a place that wasn't lost and was already built and established by the indigenous black tribes of Virginia. During this era, Nottoway Indians who lived on the reservations were not subject to paying taxes. The Nottoway Indians who lived outside of the reservations, which were reclassified as free colored people, were taxed. Taxation of free coloreds or non-reservation Indians was a means of control. And the free people who did not pay their taxes were then enslaved and forced into involuntary servitude, or what they taught us was slavery. They were enslaved and forced to work for anyone the sheriff or the tax collector assigned them to, which is identical to the prison system we have in place today. And now you know why an American would be enslaved on his own land. It was about control of the land, the indigenous people, and their resources. Taxes were just the excuse, which is precisely the reason we weren't told about slavery happening this way, because it's the same oppressive system we live under today. So no, these people weren't born into slavery. They were forced into becoming tax slaves. Dred Scott was said to have belonged to an Anglo family known as the Blow family. The father, Peter Blow, passed away, which caused Dred Scott to be transferred to another plantation, and this landed him a home with a military doctor. While staying with Dr. John Emerson, Dred Scott and his wife made their way to Illinois, which was considered a free state. Dred Scott's extended stay in Illinois and Wisconsin gave him the legal standing to make a claim for freedom. Both of those states made it clear that slavery was prohibited. Dr. Emerson died in 1843, and his wife sold off Dred Scott to an army captain. It was at this moment that Dred Scott attempted to purchase his own freedom for $300 from his slave owner's widow. The offer was refused, which caused Dred Scott to seek freedom through the courts. And as crazy as this sounds, he had to sue to gain his freedom. It isn't always some violent overthrowing where a man is running in shackles after attacking his slave owner in the middle of the night. Black Americans did not just take their freedom, they beat the racist idiots at their own game. Slavery never happened the way that they say it did. And if they told us the truth, they would have to show how many L's they've taken over the years. Dred Scott's trial began in June of 1847. During this trial, it could not be proven that Dr. John Emerson's wife owned Dred Scott. Yes, that's correct, no one owned him. He was indigenous and free, but he had been lied to for years by the Anglo colonizers. The following year, after the racists got involved, the Missouri Supreme Court decided that the case should be retried. In an 1850 retrial, the St. Louis Circuit Court ruled that Dred Scott and his family were indeed free. 2 years later, the Supreme Court stepped in again, reversing the decision of the lower court. The judge's written opinion stated that because Scott was a Negro-presenting enslaved Indian, he wasn't a citizen, and therefore had no right to sue. The decision also declared that the legislation which restricted slavery in certain territories was unconstitutional, basically saying that it was illegal for a city to consider anyone free. While the decision was well received by the slaveholders in the South, many Northerners were enraged. Abraham Lincoln was just about to call it quits with politics in this time, but once he heard about the Dred Scott case, he decided to run for president. This decision greatly influenced the nomination of Abraham Lincoln to the Republican Party and his subsequent election win, which in turn led to the South's secession from the Union. After the Civil War, Lincoln put into place the 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery. The same amendment that made slavery legal with imprisonment. Go figure. This amendment would eventually overturn the Dred Scott decision from the Supreme Court with the 14th Amendment. The same amendment intended for the protection of the true indigenous people's birthright citizenship of this land. Remember Taylor Blow from earlier? Dred Scott's former slave owner's son? After the Supreme Court decision, he purchased Dred and Harriet and set them free. Dred Scott died 9 months later, after his official freedom on paper in 1858. The entire U.S. history is a lie, and a joke, frankly. Through reading and simple research, one can unpack the entire history of our past. But it's only those with intelligence, competency, and literacy who can actually decipher the truth from the lie. Only a fool would believe what this country considers history. Well, thanks for watching. See you next time.
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you are doing great. Again, from wherever you're watching this video from, as you know, I'm your host and presenter Stories. It is important to talk about things that really matters. And I think it is important for us to just take time and reflect on all these things that are usually happening in the lives of black people. People take them for granted. That unless you sit with a black person, especially those people from the older generation, you sit with them, hear their perspectives, then you'll understand that indeed racism was not something to joke with. Today people talk about racism or racism made a long time ago. Why black people, you're complaining about all these things. Okay, well, you can say that, but try to put yourself, try to fit your feet on the shoes of black people, and then you get to understand what black people usually have to deal with. People shared what they think about this, and I want also to share with you, because I think it's imperative for me to share with you all these segments. Somebody said that I can remember my grandmother, my great-grandmother, telling me as a child, never ever trust white folks because they know their day is coming. That man in the video still feels that mental pain after all those years. Now, we also, the old man is still having the mental pain. And at some point, I really felt for him. And all those experiences that he have, it was really, really sad, like listening to all those things that, they had to go through and just everything. Really, it takes a lot from you. Them white folks treat their history like Groundhog Day. They intentionally forget what they did yesterday and continuing doing the same thing every day. There is no accountability. Someone also came and said that the US has a karmic debt, that it will pay with the blood and coin. You can't escape it, and you can't rewrite history. The truth is in the scars that cannot be erased. The truth is in the scars that cannot be erased. That's the reality, right? That's just the reality of the matter. There's so many of our elders alive and well here to tell the stories. So that's why most of us won't stop talking about the injustices. We are still living today. This message is for the ignorant immigrants and black foreigners that talk ish about black Americans and our culture. That's just fair, right? Somebody also say that not learning or teaching our children these things is doing the biggest disservice to our community. Not one woman should ever give birth while ignoring true our history. Abortion is not killing the black community. Ignorance is. Somebody also shared that when they say slavery was a long time ago, I think about my mother playing with her great-grandchildren. Then I compare that span of time with myself. My dad was born in 1927, my granddad 1892, and my great-grandfather 1852. That was before slavery ended. Yet my mother is playing with her great-grandchildren. They owe those generations restitution for the way they were treated, right? Somebody also said, don't expect justice from unjust people or morals from immoral people. They even elect the most corrupt person to lead them because he embodies their character in every detail. Unless you know them personally, don't pray for them. Instead, pray for God's injustice. Pray for God's justice on them. And that's why my family, somebody also came and said that that's why my family left the South as soon as they were old enough to go. The rest stayed behind. They took them horrific stories with them, told us about them. Some too are able to repeat. They never looked back to Mississippi and Alabama. Never. And yes, our people definitely deserve reparations. Black folks deserve reparations, as I stipulated earlier. Somebody say that I can't help but wonder, why have no one identified the white people in those photos near hanging bodies and identified the daughters and sons to this date, June 2026, and questioned them on their ancestors' behavior? Those people's families still around. Identify these families, expose the families of these creeps. I know they didn't do it, but I never see nor hear their sons or daughters of those white people in those lynching photos. What is that? Someone please tell me why they has not been done. Interview those family members today. So this is the last comment that I'm going to be reading. I'm glad we are talking about this because no, it wasn't that long time ago. And yes, it didn't stop there. I'm 48 years and I remember as a young child going to see elder family members whose parents were slaves. I think about it and I feel honored to have been able to meet them and remember their voices, smiles, and a little bit of their story. So brothers and sisters, please let me know what you'll think about this video, right? As you know, I'm your host and presenter Deconstructing Stories, but until then, I'm hoping to see you on my next video. Until then, peace, love, and harmony. Salute. See you on my next video.